It took me 5 videos, but I finally finished off 2 dudes. By the end of this one, I'll have finished off 2 more, with a 3rd quickly following. Like and subscribe if you want me to keep using my own face while I finish off dudes. This is a brief-ish history of Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed Recollection is a strategy card game for iOS, and it's pretty good. That probably sounds like I'm selling it short, but considering I'm not typically one for strategy games, it's actually saying something. To give you the short, you have a deck of various Assassin's Creed characters and NPCs, your opponent has the same, and there's a territory to dispute in the middle. You slowly earn gold to buy a card and have it available to put into that middle territory and let it earn points for conquering. But if your opponent puts a card against yours, they damage or even kill each other since they all have health points too. More expensive cards have more power or health, so you have to balance whether you need to act immediately to counter a threat or to save up for someone with more thrust. I only recorded the tutorial for today's purposes, but I played a solid amount back in the day, so I can definitely say you should go check it out if you're interested. Except for the fact that, this game would later go mysteriously missing from the App Store. Dipping brief-ishly back into Revelations, we have The Lost Archive, the game's only DLC that sees the player experiencing more first-person block platforming. Thank fucking Christ, the tower defense team wasn't part of the planning committee that day, or things could have been much worse. Instead of Desmond remembering some other stuff that happened to him, we have Clay going through his even more fractured psyche, which is saying something considering he is exclusively a fractured psyche at this point. Now, while this does remove the part I liked best about the Desmond segments in the base game, Nolan North's distinctive narration,
don't watch his channel,
it actually works in the DLC's favor, because a dude exclusively monologuing for 2 hours is actually a lousy way to do storytelling. The storytelling is done mostly environmentally, with occasional snippets of audio memories and digital emails supplementing what can't be shown. It's often creepy in a similar way to his truth puzzles in Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, and there are, throughout, these invasive images that temporarily force their way into his mind. I never knew a damn interrupting staircase could give me the creeps, but here we are. The whole thing definitely feels more experimental, and dare I say it, avant-garde than what we usually get in the series. So that's nice and all, but it's not that fun to play. I didn't go into great detail in the last video, because I'm already wordy AF, and talking about boxes would have really slowed down my roll. But I can't avoid it here. The straight platform is made up of individual blocks, and walking between platforms, or even just the individual block segments, sometimes registers a little bit wrong and leaves your ass falling. The ramp block is difficult to judge height on and always ends up either too short or face first into a laser, and there's this jumpy trampoline block that sends you so high into the air that if you land on normal ground from it, there's a good chance you'll die like it's the fucking scroll of Icarian Flight from Morrowind. It ends up feeling artificially difficult, since the puzzles are all about platforming rather than creative solutions. It's so bad that the best level is the one that doesn't let you place blocks at all. Although, that level also has visible corners of the skybox if you know where to look, which is fucking sloppy for a AAA game. There are also 20 collectible cubes hidden around. About 15 or so are insultingly easy to find. Usually you just go up until you find them, but then the last few are obnoxiously easy to miss. Remember these, they may look boring, but they will be important to reach our climax. Kind of like your mom. So, we wake up on a peaceful island. And by we, I mean Clay. And by Clay, I mean Desmond, who has somehow implicitly accessed Clay's memories. Probably slipped in him while they were wrestling or something. Clay goes to his own funeral, life goals, and we get glimpses of his personal life. Clay was a bright child with enthusiastic prospects, but his overbearing father had no idea how to be supportive, and Clay ended up with mental health problems. Gee, wonder what that's like. His mother ends up leaving, as we see in a drunken maternal breakup email she sent Clay, and though their relationship is strained, Clay does keep supporting his father financially. Clay ends up joining the Assassins, which, get this, is canonically better than mental health therapy. He begins to go on missions to uncover this Animus Project thing that Abstergo has been doing, and when they find out the things that we already know about being your own granddaddy, Clay is sent undercover to be a subject in this project. Don't worry though, he has Lucy Stillman as his secret assassin backup, who is placed into such deep cover to infiltrate the Templars that the Assassins literally haven't contacted her in years. I'm sure that won't be important. At this point, things known prior about Subject 16 happen to Subject 16. He's constantly forced into overtime in the Animus for well more than a year as Warren Vidic tries to locate the pieces of Eden for his mind control satellite, which is how Clay knew all of the lore about Jesus and shit that we discovered from his puzzles in the last 2 games. Clay massively suffers from the bleeding effect, starts to lose his mind, being unable to distinguish reality from ancestral memories, and yet, for some reason, Lucy just isn't pulling him out. In the midst of all of this, first Civ Juno tells him to help Desmond, and, coincidentally, we get a plot twist. Clay discovers some pretty damning security footage. Vidic isn't going to get the information he wants from Clay, but this Desmond Miles guy'll do just the trick. We see the plan laid out clearly. Most of the modern events from the series thus far, Desmond's time at Abstergo, his escape, Vidic failing to recapture him at the warehouse, which always did seem suspicious at the time, and finding more comfortable lodgings at Monteregione, all schemed out by Vidic to make Desmond more likely to succeed at locating Ezio's Apple of Eden. And Lucy was in on it the whole time, which is why Juno had her penetrated when Desmond did find the apple. Turns out Lucy's deep cover maintenance left her feeling abandoned by the Assassins, and so she turned double agent for the Templars. Lucy discovers Clay's discovery, and so cuts off his access to the footage, telling Clay how he's basically doomed to be an indefinite prisoner of Abstergo so he can't tell the Assassins, but she deletes his access so he can't get in trouble with Abstergo. In a strange way, she is trying to keep him safe. We even see her entire dramatic email where she's explaining to him, God damn it, Ubisoft. With no escape and no other way to help Desmond, we see Clay's suicide play out from his blood paintings on the wall, and as his mind leaves the land of the living exclusively into the Animus, we cross the Greco-Roman River Styx, which is beautifully symbolic as both a literary visualization of death and as a connection back to the Isu lore. It's also the only game I've played that represents a man's death as a Super Mario jumping segment. Following, there's a pretty little garden that would make a great background if I ever switch it up from the blank Animus footage I use. And then some extra platforming that, doesn't have clear lore reasons for being there as far as my dumbass can tell. Clay ascends into the sky. His dad leaves a voicemail Clay can't answer for obvious reasons. And as Clay approaches a heavenly doorway, he falls back down towards the earth. Because heaven isn't real in Assassin's Creed, and also possibly real life, but that's not the point. Clay awakens outside of his funeral, and like that, he's caught in a loop of these memories until he can find a way out. I mean, technically all Clay has to do is jump into chapter select for the parts he missed, but hey, that's less interesting story-wise. Find all the missing cubes, and they build a new path part of the way through the memories, and Techno Clay is able to send one final goodbye email to his dad to give him some closure. The end. Assassin's Creed 3, the fifth main game in the Ass Creed franchise, had a lot stacked up to hurdle past. It had the first new protagonist following Ezio and Altair's multi-game story arcs. It had the series' significant date of December 21st, 2012, rapidly approaching in the real world. It was set in one of the most divided and morally ambiguous periods in recent-ish history, the American Revolution, which is still hotly contested to this day. It was the first entry on a brand new game engine. Basically, Assassin's Creed 3 was under a lot of pressure. While it was a more divisive entry on release, these days I can safely say it did a pretty respectable job. The game promised a genuine American Revolution experience, and it does just that. I use the word divisive quite deliberately here. The design choices serve a purpose towards crafting a very specific experience, and so even if something isn't a flaw, it may not be to everyone's liking. I wouldn't go so far as to call it niche, since niche gaming is better represented by, say, importing a Japanese volleyball game because it was too horny for a Western release, but Assassin's Creed 3 seems fairly uninterested in doing anything just for the sake of mass audience appeal. For example, a slowly paced story allows the most complex plot the series had put out yet, but someone just wanting to get in and shank Templars may feel more impatient with it. The new systems, like hunting and building up your homestead, are crafted to feel some authentic depth, and are deeply intertwined with each other to flesh out Connor's characterization, tools, and upgrades. Nothing is tacked on, and everything does serve a purpose. However, if someone doesn't want to murder ungulates or make friends with drunk Irishmen, they miss out on the whole the game is presenting them. I think everything is worth it because it culminates beautifully when you let the pieces fall into place. The more you are willing to put into the game, the more you will get out of the game. Yes, I realize that statement describes a large majority of games. Let's break down some serious changes. The puppeteering system is further broken down into something more streamlined. To start, the high-profile shoulder button is all you need for full-speed parkour now. No more holding down that button plus the foot button. The difference is massive in improved fluidity as you move, but it will fuck with your muscle memory after playing the previous games. It is a necessary evil. Colonial America didn't have centuries of history for building tall shit, so now parkour has to work more smoothly up the uneven paths of trees and rock faces too, to compensate. Several actions now share one interact button instead of being spread across the controller like your granddad's pubic lice, which makes a significant difference for combat. Countering used to be holding the block button plus pressing the weapon hand button when attacked. It was easy to treat passively. If you missed the counter timing, you were still safely blocking, no risk taken. Now, blocking and countering are on a single button. Hold to block, tap to counter. If you're blocking, you can't counter. It makes combat less safe, which honestly makes combat a better challenge. Enemies are a little more aggressive now, too, and even more specialized. Any enemy type above basic weakling has immunity to some counter options or even the kill streaks that return from Brotherhood and Revelations. Since guns are finally in wide use, an enemy with a loaded gun will always try and keep their distance to get a shot off. Hell, enough enemies with loaded muskets form a firing line, and you'll have to grasp a nearby mook to take their load all over. Stealth has also been modified to befit the new setting. Natural surroundings mean you can move around freely in tall enough vegetation, or overhead in the treetops without being discovered, and you can whistle from hiding spots to trick enemies into investigating at a better knifing distance. Other changes. Most new features from Revelations are gone. No block puzzles, thank God. No tower defense, thank God. Notoriety is back to normal, and bombs are mostly gone too. Except for tripwire bombs, the one type of bomb that no one fucking used then or now. Ezio's economic system is also gone, replaced by a crafting and trading system involving the people you've befriended for your homestead. Staple Ezio tools like the hidden gun are out due to normal guns, and new tools like rope darts are in, allowing me to pretend I'm Mortal Kombat's Scorpion in combat, or to violently hang people in stealth, impaled by the neck as they writhe and asphyxiate. That part's actually kind of fucked up when I say it out loud. Even the lock-on system of Ezio's game is no more. Formerly, lock-on just locked on to the nearest mofo. As Creed 3's lock-on toggles a reticule, you point at the mofo you want to aim at, and in the most recent re-release, even just turns into the kind of third-person free aiming which is standard in the following games. Assassin recruits return, but modified significantly. This time, instead of dozens of generic assassins with randomized names and faces, there are 6 unique named characters who each introduce additional skills on top of Summon to Murder, which yes, they obviously still do. They all have unique requirements to recruit as well. Instead of just...
I thank you.
They have goals that line up with their character. A more revolutionary character sees you fighting forced enlistment. A socioeconomically minded character has you eliminate landlords attempting to unethically evict families, and a doctor has you responding to health hazards during an epidemic.
I mean to start my inoculations. It's the most effective way to prevent the disease.
Not a worry. Pity people are so damn stupid. Hey, Connor?
Well, that aged remarkably well. This is only to name a few, because these are all the different tasks. Credit where credit is due, we don't typically get this kind of variety in the series. Once you do enough, they help Connor take out a Templar leader, and Connor tells them about how the Templars have been behind all their woes. Recruits also have unique optional conversations, so despite their limited screen time, they feel like characters instead of interchangeable murder puppets. This game ain't just here to tweak things around. Creed 3 legitimately wanted to fucking innovate some goddamn new features. The aforementioned homestead missions see you helping people in distress, they move into your frontier community, and their relationships with Connor and each other change and grow as you go along. I don't really need to penetrate these too deeply for my videos, but these missions are sweet little interludes between the violence and conspiracies. They make good palate cleansers for a story that definitely leans a little more bleak at times. Hunting is also new and elaborate. Various animals live throughout the frontier, even having distinct territories with a different mix of creatures. You can find clues for tracking animals, set lures, even use bait to attract them where you want them. Stabbing them gives better pelts than shooting them, so it all ties very naturally into the new stealth options, and you can become this expert hunter carrying out well-laid plans for maximum benefit. Or you could also play it like me, running around like a buffoon, shanking animals foolish enough to get within shanking distance of a fucking maniac. You do have to be at least a little careful though. Predators, and sometimes bull elk, do fight back. This part could have used a little more love. It's sadly just a quick time event or two, and then the fight's over. It also doesn't help that only the elk act realistically defensive, trying to escape when possible. The predators are on maximum aggro at all fucking times. Like, if you run into a wolf, you aren't fighting one wolf. You're fighting 8 goddamn wolves flying directly at you like the Canis lupus version of Galaga. Speaking of flying around, there are now collectible pages from Benjamin Franklin's encyclopedias in the main cities, which will blow around in the wind until you catch up to them. Quite a novel concept for a game about running around. Collectibles that run away from you. I mean, it's novel if you haven't played Spyro the Dragon, shut up. Next, to unlock new fast travel points in the game's cities Boston and New York, underground tunnels. Despite Freemasons being the basic bitches of secret conspiracy theories, Ubisoft had the remarkable restraint to not tie them into anything major. They aren't a global force like Assassins or Templars, they just masoned up some underground tunnels full of navigational puzzles, parkour puzzles, and puzzles, like a bunch of adorable bricklaying mole men. The Revolutionary War gives new opportunities too, like capturing forts. Your goal is to take out their leader, destroy their gunpowder supply, and lower the flag, and the Continental Army can march in and claim it for themselves. You can carefully sneak in, plan your attack strategically, and if you're anything like me, you'll fuck up and be stuck fighting off the entire fort with a big axe. You can also just go running in, big axe at the ready, and shank the commander like he's the biggest dude in the prison yard, in case you were wondering. Biggest and innovativiest naval missions, where you captain a ship in big historical battles. This one toes the line between realism and fun, since turning and fighting big-ass 18th century boats is slower than your grandmother's arthritic foreplay. It's definitely been sped up enough to keep people like, well, me, from getting bored. It's not quite Ship Simulator, but it's not terribly far off either. Half the battle is lining up cannons properly against your target, with a smaller swivel gun that allows more precise individual shots against smaller boats or exposed gunpowder storage. You can take cover from oncoming fire to avoid damage to your crew, and there are different types of cannon shot that can be fired for different effects, like chain shot, which shreds sails and rigging, leaving your enemy dead in the water without sinking them. You'll move faster when the wind is at your back, and you make tighter turns when you're at slower speeds. Depending on the mission, you'll have to contend with nasty weather, rough seas, and dangerous rocky outcrops. You even get a bonus Templar to take down through these missions. A lot of people seem to hold this stuff as their favorite new addition, and yeah, that's valid. Usually, I take the time now to rattle off a list of things that bother me, but before I do that, I actually want to rattle off a list of things that please me. This game, plain and simple, has an incredibly detailed world that feels properly lived in. The design is dynamic. Predators will hunt prey and even attack soldiers that stumble into their territory. Foxes will steal animals trapped in lures if they get to them before you do. Similar but more widespread than the system in Revelations, British soldiers and colonial soldiers will break out into battle if they cross paths. The weather now dynamically changes, and in addition to looking beautiful and pretty realistic considering the hardware, snow actually slows you down more the deeper it gets, so you have to adjust traversal accordingly. Almost every ally in the game can be found in the game world at some point for additional dialogue. You can use a historically accurate duckfoot pistol and shoot several dudes at once. You can pet dogs now! The portions in Connor's home village feel especially authentic, and that's because Ubisoft actually brought in Kanien'kehá:ka tribe members to consult on the design from the ground up, both to give the most authentic portrayal possible and to perform all of the voice acting for the tribe members in the game, in their native tongue. This is one of those games that could have a whole attention to detail video series, but since I have neither the attention span nor the professionalism for such a thing, I'll move on. If you watched my previous videos, you already know by now, I can't hook up with something without negging it down to my level first, so let's call out some issues. With a new game engine come new bugs, and though it is mostly smaller objects glitching against the physics on the occasions you see something, other occurrences are more noticeable. Navigating through the menus and the map can be unwieldy due to the layouts and some strange control choices, especially jumping around in the crafting and trading systems. Syncing viewpoints only unfogs a limited radius around the area, so you'll have to run around like a dummy to unfog the in-between bits on the map. There are several noteworthy subtitle errors where a character's name is misspelled or the wrong character is identified as talking. Much like Assassin's Creed 2, many supporting characters show up to do about 2 things and then just fuck off to be revolting elsewhere. Optional objectives are frequently harder than ever, sometimes even being a matter of luck. Like a side mission making the Wolf QTE harder than usual, telling you not to take too much damage, and telling you that you can't shoot them. Another mission tells you to limit kills and gives you a counter that goes up to 3. Instead of failing if you exceed the 3 count, which is the intuitive explanation, you fail if you meet the count. And it later gives you a target who also raises the kill count. So you likely have no choice but to replay the entire mission if you want full sync because it didn't give you the information you needed to know up front. Final complaint from me. If you're really watching carefully, late story missions are not polished as carefully as the early game missions, even jumping around in places where additional gameplay was almost certainly originally planned. Storytime. Having cured his coma by visiting a mathematical void during mental time travel, Desmond and his surviving friends have hooked up with his daddy and arrived at the precursor temple located in Brotherhood's DLC. Ezio's apple opens the front door and they find a single power source just sitting on the floor for primary temple operations. Too bad for them, there's another locked door needing another ancient key, and Juno slaps Desmond with the bleeding effect so hard he passes out on the floor 5 fucking minutes after waking from his coma. They animus him to see what these ancient broads nagging about this time, and Desmond finds himself inside a dapper English man, Haytham Kinway, going to the theater in the year 1754. The play's fine, but it would be so much more fun to climb the balcony, slip backstage, break into VIP seating, murderize a dude, steal his necklace, and shush the dead dude's child. So Haytham elects to do that instead. His boss is thoroughly impressed because he recognizes the necklace as a precursor relic and assigns Haytham overseas to the colonies to find the site that the necklace matches. Along the way, we get some more time to know Haytham. He's very blunt, in a British stiff upper lip kind of a way, and you get the impression that he's a little classist too. But he's clearly a capable man, as he spends the time figuring out he's being tracked and even eliminates his would-be killer, and helps avoid an ambush at sea with the power of lightning, before finally setting his eyes on the new world and the title card. Setting foot in Boston, Haytham is greeted by a young and chipper Charles Lee, who practically squeals like a fangirl upon meeting him. They also meet Benjamin Franklin, who is like, "Gosh darn it, I accidentally dropped 36 almanac pages across Boston and New York City." He doesn't get to do much in the story, but talking to him further gives some good groundwork for what will be the revolution in a couple decades.
See, I've begun to wonder if Parliament best serves our interests. The colonies might be better off independent and autonomous.
And also for Benjamin Franklin's absolute love for MILFs.
Older women cannot conceive, which means one less thing over which to fret. The pleasure of corporal enjoyment with an old woman is at least equal and frequently superior, every knack being by practice capable of improvement.
Benjamin Franklin didn't make love. Benjamin Franklin fucked. Anyway, Haytham and Charles Lee are going to have to recruit some recruits if they want to find any ancient gizmos. So he starts to put together his own merry band. Charles Lee, fangirl. William Johnson, expedition dude, frequent friend to the Iroquois Confederacy, and man with 2 names that mean penis if you call him Willie. Thomas Hickey, the horny drunken rascal that every friend group has. Benjamin Church, guy who has to be saved. And John Pitcairn, guy who also has to be saved. I really like these missions because even though we know Haytham isn't going to be the main character, we really get to see some development from him. His dry humor gets to shine through more. His harsh demeanor softens into respect for his colleagues, and he all around gets to show off just how effective he is at handling things running around the French and Indian War like this. We also get to see some of his history peek out, as he and British General Edward Braddock clearly have some bad blood from previously falling out. If you want to know more about that, though, you'll have to pick up a copy of Assassin's Creed Forsaken, now available for sale from your favorite bookstores wherever books are sold for only the low price. During the process of all this, Haytham kills a slaver and meets a Kanienke Haka woman whose name his white boy tongue just keeps fucking up.
I'm Godzi Zio.
God's day.
Just call me Zio.
Dio.
Zio is willing to show him her tribe's precursor site if he helps with a massive problem. British General Edward Braddock. Haytham's like, "Yeah, I'll help you kill that fucker." You'll know exactly why he wants to help her kill that fucker if you pick up a copy of Assassin's Creed Forsaken, now available for sale from your favorite. Being in the middle of the French and Indian War, it takes them a little while to pencil in an ambush on Braddock's busy schedule, and during that time, Haytham and Zio get closer. They finally get to ambush the dude. Hey look, George Washington. They finally get to ambush the dude and murderize Braddock. Zio shows him her secret temple, but nothing happens, so she also shows him her secret temple, but in a vagina way. Cutting back to the fellas, Haytham is so proud of Charles Lee's accomplishments that he invites him to officially join his secret club, the Knights Templar. The twist hits early with this game, and it really sets the stage for themes across this game and really the rest of the Americas saga. We assumed he was an assassin because he was doing assassin things, and that's the point. The Templars and the Assassins aren't nearly as different as thousands of years of conflict might have you think. This game brings back the subtle, nuanced morality of the original game, which is nice, considering some of the Templars from Ezio's games could be, let's be fair, a little bit over the top with their evil at times. Desmond, probably tired of having a what the fuck game-changing revelation every few days, pops out of the Animus to find out those darn precursors failed to provide any more of those power sources for the rest of the temple. The slackers. So his friends start searching, like, eBay or something. Also, some random child abuse. Nothing too wild. Back to the past, Zio and Hatham's game of sperm cell plinko have left her with child. And though they implicitly go their separate ways, she's got a whole matrilineal tribe to help out, so no big deal. Her son, Radun Hagedun, appears to be a normal child until you do the math. Adding to the series confusion with children from back in 2, he is 4 years old for this bit. I cannot explain it either. Radun Hagedun goes out running and playing with his friends, and all is going well until he runs into Charles Lee and co. Turns out when you're not experiencing them from their own perspective, there's a lot more nastiness in this bunch. Charles Lee is outright racist describing the tribe. Now, the game never expresses this part, but here's an interesting tidbit. The real Charles Lee was married to a Kanayan Kahaka woman himself around this time, which gets acknowledged later on when the tribe's matriarch refers to him by the name they gave him. So, it seems like this detail still happened in Askreed alt history. My headcanon is that he was stuck living in one-panel boomer comics with her until it soured him into racism. Either way, Lee tells Radun Hagedun to pass on a message to the tribe's leaders to give them what they want, what they really, really want, and they'll be left alone. Radun Hagedun asks,
"What is your name?"
Charles Lee. Why do you ask?
"So I can find you."
Jesus fucking Christ, this 4-year-old is gangsta. One casual concussion later, he awakens to find his village is slightly on fire, and Zio dies. Cut ahead a few years and we see him spending more time with his best friend Konintokon at age 13? It still seems off. They worry about colonial spread threatening their land and gather some animal stuff for ceremonial purposes. The clan elder takes Radun Hagedun in for a lesson. They do not join the other tribes in war, as they are supposed to guard these lands. Here, look in this Isu crystal ball and see. Juno turns him into an eagle in a vision, cause that's dope yo, and shows him he has to go find the assassins in order to help his people, because the Templars are scheming to take the land. In case concussing a 4-year-old didn't tip you off to that. Stop the Templars, and your people will be totally fine, bro, says she. After discussing his vision, the clan elder tells him where he can start looking, and sends him off on his grand quest, where I promptly got killed by a cougar. Honestly, that sounds about right for me. Surprisingly, the clan elder's directions of east actually get him where he's going, and he finds Achilles Davenport, a single old man limping along, the only assassin remaining in the broader English colonies after Hatham's Templars wiped the rest out. Achilles wants nothing to do with this kid. He eventually changes his mind and starts assassin training, but remains more cynical due to, well, a lot of shit. Achilles is an interesting counterpoint for Radun Hagedun. Throughout the game, they sometimes debate, sometimes outright quarrel over what breaks down to idealism versus realism. But Achilles clearly cares for his new protege. In town, Achilles decides to provide him with a new name he can use among the colonial Europeans, Connor, since his white daddy gave him a lighter complexion than many natives, potentially allowing Connor a way to avoid more overt racism. Probably works better not wearing full tribal garb, but hey, that's only what Achilles says the reason is. We find out later that he had a son, Connor Davenport, who died at a young age. You may not realize it at the time, but that moment was secretly a moment of growth for Achilles. The two are in Boston for supplies, and political tensions are starting to boil over. Sure would be a shame if a secret group was trying to egg on some sort of Boston massacre. Hey look, that dude belongs to a secret group. Connor stops one sniper, but the Templars are really a 2 snipers kind of club, And so Connor is briefly framed for starting the Boston Massacre until Samuel Adams helps him clear his name and also shares a brief debate about incremental change versus freedom for all. America will totally help get everyone equal freedoms once the white landowners have their freedom, bro. Achilles finally admits that Connor is ready to take on the role of a real assassin, and the nice, significant moment when he's handed that equipment for the first time is interrupted by a drunk Irishman falling into the river. Desmond pops out after his bros locate a glow cube where he has to climb a building under construction and parachute down to the office where it's being held. Except it's a trap. The Templars have Daniel Cross waiting to ambush him. He's a big deal if you haven't read the comics, as Daniel Cross was the guy Abstergo subconsciously programmed to betray and eliminate 99% of the modern assassin brotherhood. However, he's kind of a wreck at this point, and he just gets knocked out by Desmond. Back into the Animus, Connor doesn't always see eye to eye with the revolutionaries, but their goals end up lining up with his, and so he starts doing some revolting stuff to take down the conspiracy you built up for the first part of the game, you monster. Take William Johnson. Coninticon is like, howdy, William Johnson's gonna buy our land, we should declare war on him or something. And Connor's like, hell yeah, war post. Willie Johnson is making money from tea taxes, so they Boston Tea Party that shit into the harbor.
You should have killed him.
There was no need.
William Johnson has returned.
Since that didn't work, he just goes to murderize Johnson instead. Johnson's invited the Iroquois leaders over for some gunpoint negotiations, and Connor won't stand for such a thing. They do the usual death chat, where Johnson argues he was just forcefully protecting the tribes from colonial spread. There's some hypocrisy, and some of the usual Templar problem of, I know what's best for you, even if it means murdering you, but he's not exactly wrong, considering how colonial spread would, continue impacting native tribes. Then Willie Johnson goes flaccid. The British are still marching in on the unrest under John Pitcairn, so after tolerating Paul Revere far longer than I would have, Connor ends up crossing the near ceaseless discharge that is the Battle of Bunker Hill, which of course took place on Breed's Hill. But instead of breeding Pitcairn, Connor kills him, so everything is named far too misleadingly. The Templars had been trying to play both sides of the war so that Pitcairn could call for parley and negotiate the terms for independence that the Templars wanted, but now nothing is stopping the colonies from revolutioning even harder. Also, they are planning to kill Commander George Washington, probably for shits and giggles. Connor goes to New York to stop Hickey without an ounce of subtlety, which gets both parties locked up. Charles Lee and Connor have their first reunion in years, and Lee and Hickey decide to frame Connor for trying to kill Georgie. The assassin recruits and Achilles interrupt the execution, and Hickey bites it. Unlike the last two Templars, he has no nuanced argument to his plan and dies the way he lived. A horny bastard.
I'm the type of guy who likes to have a beer in one hand and a tea in the other.
Desmond pops out. Cube in Brazil. Oh shit, it's Daniel Cross again. Desmond beats Danny up even harder. They get back and immediately discover the location of another one. So Desmond's daddy's like, it's fine, I'll go get it. Nothing bad'll happen. Having saved George Washington's ass, George Washington recognizes Connor as an ass saver and has Connor save the Patriot asses by finding out where Benjamin Church took all the, cough syrup and stuff. And Connor officially meets his dad. Despite being mortal enemies who keep murderizing each other's assistant managers, neither of them move to attack the other. Benjamin Church betrayed his Templar homies, and Connor and Hatham cautiously begin working together. They seem to claim it's because of the common enemy, but it's really this deep familial desire to connect and help show the other why they are actually in the right. The parts with these two in this uncertain gray zone are some of my favorite moments in the series. Their differences are often shown instead of spoken. Connor is visibly uncomfortable with lines Hatham is willing to cross, like having a torture fort, and Hatham is disappointed Connor isn't willing to cross lines for his ideas for utopia, like having a torture fort. And when the differences are spoken, it's both sides cutting to the core of what makes assassins and Templars fruits of a different fruit basket, despite their similarities. The writing even has the nuance that Achilles isn't even scolding Connor anymore when he hears about such a risky enterprise. He has warnings for Connor, sure, but he's trusting Connor to make the right decision, whatever it ends up being. This is a really mature thing for Achilles to do, considering that we will find out in a later game that Hatham is the reason Achilles is limping around, and not in like a butt sex kind of a way, so you know. Oh yeah, also Connor and Hatham murderized Church somewhere and all that. Unfortunately, the differences seem to become more and more irreconcilable the deeper they get. Hatham is concerned Georgie is a bad influence for Connor, and reveals why. Since so many native tribes kept siding with the British, GW has this habit of sending his troops to attack Connor's tribe. Like he is doing right now. And like he did when Connor was 4. Charles Lee had nothing to do with the fire. Concussion, yes. Fire, no. Pause time, I get it. George Washington is one of America's most beloved presidents, probably because he was the first, and your first time is very important, according to a very reliable source I found. Your first time is very important. Your first kiss? Your first car? Your first time getting your asshole sucked by a literal clown behind a Denny's? I am going to recycle jokes from episode 1 until I inevitably get killed by Jeff Bezos' robots for 0.00023% increased profit margins, I swear. But guys, this part's real. It's called the Sullivan Expedition, and it destroyed more than 40 villages. Connor tells Washington to fuck right off, Hatham to fuck right off for keeping this secret just to win a debate, and that he will murderize both of them if they try to stop him from murderizing the American murderization troops. He's able to shoot the messengers, but when he gets to the village, the Templars have already made another move. Charles Lee had been spreading lies that Connor had betrayed them to the Americans, and a handful of Kanien'kehá:ka warriors have been sent under Lee's direction to fight a considerably larger fighting force, so Connor solves that pacifistically by choking them all out. He gets pinned by an enraged Kanien'kehá:ka, and unable to convince him of the truth, Connor is forced to kill his childhood friend in self-defense. Charles Lee ain't done though. He also uses his position over American troops to fuck up the Battle of Monmouth and flee. Though Connor's able to scrape together something of a rescue, he tells Washing George that this time he's done. For real. No take-backsies with the revolutionaries, and don't come crying to him when Benedict Arnold's bonus content comes rolling around in time for Baneshake's next video. Hey, Desmond, your daddy got kidnapped by the serial kidnappers who keep doing this obvious thing in that obvious trap from the last time we were in the modern day. Desmond fucking rampages his way into Abstergo in the most badass modern mission in the series, which isn't saying much because there's like 3.5 missions in this series that aren't just locking the modern characters in a room with a magic bed. And when Warren Vidic is like, "Give me your ball, asshole," Desmond is like, "Here's my ball, asshole," and Desmond's daddy is like, "Sorry about all the child abuse, that was badass." Now that you have enough glow cubes, they actually have to be plugged in, and though I like doing that part scattered throughout as I'm playing the whole game, slackers have to do it all at once. Each area of the temple activated lets Juno talk about the different ways they tried to save the Earth way back when. They tried big towers to suck off the sun's ejection, but that's pretty dumb. Towers take forever to build. Force fields are much cooler, but they really only work human-sized, which is convenient for Connor and the force field ring he can find to deflect bullets, but not so good for, solar Armageddon. Next was a pretty minor one, really. If enough humans believe in something, it warps reality and makes it true. Wait, hold on, that's fucking huge. We ever gonna acknowledge the implications of that one, Assassin's Creed? Maybe? Sort of? Sort of it is. Obviously that didn't work, because getting humans to agree on anything is impossible. Pineapple on pizza. Duke it out in the comments. Minerva and Jupiter, the other Isu fuckers we've seen, started talking to people in the future, but you already knew about that one. Juno tried to put her husband Aita into a cool techno body or something, but that failed so badly she ended up having to euthanize him. At that point, she ran out of ideas and just uploaded her brain into their computers alone for something like 75,000 years. I really hope she at least had some good porn in there or something. Connor is finally tired of Charles Lee hiding in the torture fort and comes up with a brilliant plan. He can have his boat bombard the fort as a distraction, and he'll sneak in during that. He immediately gets a concussion, and Charles Lee isn't even there because Hatham sent him away when the fort started getting bombarded. It's clear at this point that their differences are incompatible, and though Hatham has the upper hand, he leaves himself open, and Connor kills him. In their final moments in the memory corridor, Haytham expresses the closest amount of pride in Connor as his ego will allow. There's a strong implication he let Connor make the killing blow. On some level, Haytham just couldn't kill the son he had begun to connect with. That ends up being the line he couldn't cross, even for his vision of utopia. Connor puts on some thematic war paint and goes after Charles Lee. In contrast with every other target's expressed ideological differences, at this point it is just plain personal between the two. Chasing Lee leads to a burning ship under construction, where Connor takes a slight splinter, and Lee takes it deep in his guts. Even severely injured, the two limp out their chase until they really can't go any further. Connor catches up to Lee at a bar. They silently share a drink, and without a word left to say, Connor kills Charles Lee and takes the key. Inside the now abandoned village, Connor speaks once more with Juno. "Yeah, I lied about keeping your people safe, bro, but you came all this way for that fucking key, so you might as well at least hide it, LMFAO." Connor buries the temple key in the grave of Connor Davenport, and with their MacGuffin located, Desmond and co. defile the child's grave. The final door opens and Juno beckons. "Touch this machine and save the world." Except, oh my god, it's Minerva with a folding chair. As it turns out, Juno is absolutely not on the same side as Minerva and Jupiter. When the world became too imminently fucked to save last time, a few surviving Isu used automated processes to eventually finish the original tower plan so that they could be eventually available, hidden away in secret chasms to prevent the 2012 catastrophe. Minerva and Jupiter used their math to predict the future and leave messages with Desmond and his ancestors so that he would be able to activate the device due to having sufficient Isu DNA. Juno decided to use this to her own advantage. Digitizing herself would allow her to survive the extinction of the Isu, but she would also be unable to escape on her own. So she modified the device to allow her to be freed upon activation. The endless assassin Templar squabble would ensure humans would never develop their own solution in time, so all she had to do was wait. Also, Desmond will be killed if he uses the device. That's important too. Minerva discovered Juno's plot during one last bit of future looking, using her math, and discovers Juno's plan, which is how she is here now. One ancient person in a machine versus another ancient person who is a message in a bottle sent across time for the ultimate battle of making a man touch a ball. Minerva warns Desmond that Juno is worse than losing most of the human population because she just wants to conquer and enslave humankind again, and shows him a potential future if he lets the sun splooge its splooge. Though most of humanity dies, he will become an inspiring leader, eventually turning into a religious icon years past his death, wherein his religious followers will use him as an icon to oppress and control the populace. He's like, that sounds a lot like the setup for this one series. It's called Assassin's Creed. No way I can risk letting that happen. He says a final goodbye to his loved ones, and saves the world, freeing Juno, and dying. But things don't quite end there. Unknown individuals continue accessing the genetic memories. With his war over, Connor takes the tomahawk out from the post. He sees the culmination of his efforts. In New York, he watches the British finally evacuating from a free country right next to a slave auction. In the empty village, a traveler talks with him about how the new government is selling these native lands so they won't have to tax the new American citizens yet. Connor's still limping months after his injury. So many friends and family members are either dead or gone, and the country he fought for itself fights for very few. It's bittersweet, but then again, that's American history for you. This game promised a genuine American Revolution experience, and it does just that. Before I let myself finish, I have news. Recently, and I literally mean while I was writing this video recently, a researcher by the name of Lars de Wilt published some, you guessed it, research he gained from interviews with Ask Creed devs back in 2019. And we got a convenient whopper of a reveal. The original plan for Desmond's ending. You know, the thing we just saw. Except it was also the original ending for the games because this was definitely not something anyone expected, working on a new IP about Crusader parkour back in the mid-2000s. With that in mind, I have to set the stage correctly. Assassin's Creed was originally envisioned as a trilogy. 1, 2, no Brotherhood or Revelations, and a version of 3, presumably somewhat similar to what we got, since it began development right after 2 at the same time as Brotherhood. Patrice Désilets, whom we've discussed, and 3's creative director Alex Hutchinson confirmed this. Desmond takes down Abstergo using his ancestors' mad skills, yo. But it's the end of the world 2012, and so Desmond and Lucy, who isn't dead in this version because Brotherhood wasn't in the works yet, remember, go off in a spaceship and start a new civilization somewhere else as a new Adam and Eve. This is even why they named her Lucy, after the Australopithecus afarensis skeleton of the same name. Now, a lot of comment sections posting this news have been, OMG, that is so much better. LOL, fuck this game series, I am a hater. Now obviously it's impossible to judge an idea completely without seeing the execution, which we can't, since they didn't execute the idea, but I'm very hesitant to say I don't think this would have been a satisfying conclusion. This kind of thing very much risks jumping the shark. For one, space travel isn't really much of an established thing in the series. The ones who came before are not ancient aliens so much as ancient Earthlings, and the only explicit space travel in the lore is the moon landing, which is, historical precedent. If the Isu had technology that let them travel the great expanse of space to habitable lands, they would have just used it and survived. Also though, what's the point of taking down Abstergo if everyone's just going to die anyway? Why bother saving humans from global control if they're just going to have 4 days of freedom before the sun crispy fries them to death? Also, is it just Desmond and Lucy escaping? 2 people are not enough to create a genetically surviving species. Biologists generally say it takes 50 reproducing adults to avoid the downsides of inbreeding, and 500 to avoid extinction due to environmental change, something that seems very plausible on a planet with limited technology and no established society. Who knows? Maybe all of this and more would have been explained in that original version, but considering the series prefers when its twists throw a burlap sack over your head before slapping you in the nuts with a sock full of coins, metaphorically, I think this ending would have been notorious in the gaming industry, in the way Mass Effect 3's ending is. I don't think people would have been that happy with it. Now, at some point after plans changed, rumor has it that the new plan would shift to Desmond being able to mentally time travel backwards without an animus, and may or may not be able to change the past, something else that also obviously didn't happen in the series. I only say all of this plus the previous stuff because it will be interesting to discuss in context of what the most recent games in the series decided to do, as of right now in the year of our Lord and Savior 2022. Of course, at the rate a briefish history of Assassin's Creed goes, that means we'll come back to this talking point in 2045. Like and subscribe if you want to watch me flounder my way through this series for the next 23 years before I am inevitably killed by Jeff Bezos' robots for 0.00023% increased profit margins.